Hello, ladies, gents, and federal agents trying to gather evidence. My new novel is finally out right now, and you can find a link to it in the description or pinned in the comment section. It's a fantasy novel called The Last of the Wicked, about terrible modern-day witches and the gruesome price they pay for their magic. I'm trying out this time around to make it very cheap and accessible, so you can get it for a low price of $3 for the ebook and $12 for a gorgeous paperback. I put my heart and soul into that thing, I promise you. I would love it if you go over there and get a copy, and please leave a review if you read it and you liked it. That would be like the absolute best way to help me out. You can also find a link to the first half of the story if you'd like to try before you buy. I'm a big believer in that. I'm extremely proud of this novel. I've put a lot of love and care into it, and I sincerely think that it has a good chance to be, one of those stories that stays with you for a long time. If all this sounds interesting and you want to hear more, keep watching for a deeper delve into the story, premise, and setting. Spoiler-free, of course. But even if you're not interested, thank you for coming this far. I appreciate you. Hope to see you on whatever comes next. Meredith is a terrible witch. Every witch in Galavan must pull her weight, and she hasn't lured a single youth in 5 years. Something always goes wrong somehow. Her brood sister is fed up with her, which is a dreadful problem to have when her brood sister is the head of the coven. Living up to her standards is an everyday struggle. Meredith can't afford another failure. They'll brand her, banish her to Earth, toss her off the flip side, or much worse if her secrets come to light. Her compulsions, her pilfer stash, her doubt, her terrible illness. And if they find out she's been helping the serfs, well, she might get to choose the pyre or the wheel. She has one more chance to turn it around. Her retrieval window starts tonight. The tools are ready. The mark is promising. She couldn't be more driven. Failure is not an option. Dread congeals in Meredith's gut as she opens the portal to Earth. What will go wrong this time? The landmass, now known as Galavan, used to be a valley deep in the French Pyrenees. The first Furies, the founding witches of yore, built a laboratory-turned-fortress under the shadow of those mountains. This small citadel became a safe haven for all of witchdom on Earth. The wicked were hunted as they would be in those times, and the founding Furies were faced with a choice: fight a losing war with frothing humans, or embrace exile. They called it the Conveyance, a portal that descended upon Galavan like a dome and transported the entire valley into the Hollow, essentially a trap door under the rug of three-dimensional space, thrice tethered to Earth's gravitational well. 4 centuries later, Galavan is now thus. The Corin Range traps moisture and channels it downslope until it gathers into tributaries to the Froth. Heat siphons, or heat eaters, tap and redistribute the heat rising from the rest of Galavan, keeping the temperature close to freezing up high. The flow lines that stem from these mountains are the main contributor to regulating temperature all over the realm. Downhill on the distal side, we find Tremelton, named after Helena Tremel, the Marrow Banshee, prime surgeon and haunt of Brattenburg. Tremelton's orderly burgs and fortified walls perch ominously over the cliffside, presiding over the harsh Devilstrand plantations. The hags of Tremelton pride themselves in their close observance of tradition, their unrivaled dueling champions, and the pragmatic efficiency of their youth processing facilities. They are especially proud after their role in squashing the human rebellions. Across the Froth, past the Wildlife Reserve and the Stones of the Furies monument, we can find sprawling Brenna, the capital and current seat of council governance. Originally simply known as the town of Galavan, named after Katerina Galvan, first of the Furies, it survived the conveyance only to be demolished at the end of the War of Succession. So Brenna the Mad Crone dropped a mountain on it, ending the rising dominance of the Eastern Cabal. The sheared remains of the mountain were thenceforth known as the Broken Peak. The city was rebuilt and renamed, and the buried ruins still languish as the twisted sewer tunnels of old Brenna below. Though they wouldn't openly admit it to their colleagues, Brennan crones consider themselves the true core of the Coven. Brenna is home to the Judicar Magister, the Academy for Wicked Youth, the hulking manufactory, the felling fields, and of course, Galavan Tower, bastion of bureaucracy and site of the council sessions. History lives and breathes through the immaculate old world streets of Brenna. Further down Froth, across the urban flowline, the Yanwar harvest plants loom over the ruins of Yanwar, named after despicable Chen Yaniwa, the stricken, the unspoken, a deliberate reminder of consequence to opposition. Old Yanwar and its mass graves rest above, leveled during the War of Succession, and new Yanwar split on both sides of the Froth, ravaged centuries later during the Civil War. In its broken bones are etched the scars of neighbor against neighbor, Judicar against Greycloak. Follow the bend of the Froth and plunge down Mergat's Fall, and you will immerse yourself in the sights, sounds, and fragrances of Valen's Feast, the cradle of Galavan's agriculture under the watchful care of Devalin, named after shrewd Valen, first engineer, architect of realms. Devalin lounges in gold and green along the shores of the dam-born Frothbelly Lake, as it's affectionately called. Devalin's shrews have a bit of a loose reputation among other witches, with lax public customs and colorful views about what constitutes proper public decorum. None of this detracts from the fact their manufacturing prowess is unrivaled in all of Galavan. Only the most talented among the Brutespawn earned their place as an alum in the conservatories, and many a counselor has benefited from their investiture empowering rituals. If a shrew's nose turns up over much, though, they will often be reminded that their unchecked tinkering is to blame for the golem revolts, and it is they who are in charge of flushing Galavan's toilet. And down at the bottom, where fertile land becomes swamp, where the trees droop and the labor swelters, lies Tarkis, named after Tarka the Gorgon, Supreme Magister, Butcher of Shaglaroth. The dire bog is constantly shrouded in mist, which is created by the smattering of furnaces that close the water cycle in Galavan. The Tarkan Gorgons have a well-earned reputation for eccentricity, stubbornness, and ill temper, and a not quite substantiated inclination for mysticism and superstition. It's down in the swamp and along the Great Steam Wall that serf labor is the most grueling as a witch's tenure in the Tarkis Practicum, where the most formidable among them are forged into deadly conduits of incantation. An astute listener might have gathered by now that witches are an unruly lot. Galavan's history is rife with conflict, and it is only recently that the Puritan doctrine has managed to keep a semblance of peace and cooperation among the wicked. With the challenges and shortages facing the Coven in modern times, it's anybody's guess how long the peace will last.